Home, a word that denotes haven, tranquility, and family, but it often transforms into a hell for many. Houses are fascinating. Take the cement structure of a home that hides away tales and tragedies, musings, and maladies, all while standing upright and resolute. From the outside, a house can cast a certain image, but a grand mansion that exudes stature and class can hide behind its walls dark secrets. One such mansion stood on 20 Grass Tree Close, Bridgman Downs, Queensland, Australia. This is the story of its inhabitants and their dark secrets. This is the story of the Singh-Sica family. Hi everyone, welcome to Desi Crime, a show where we dive deep into some of the craziest stories from around South Asia. I'm your host Aryaan.
And I'm Aishwarya.
And the case we have for you today is the largest investigation by the Queensland Police Department spread across 5.5 years, involving more than 100 police officers, 100 witnesses, 1,500 lines of inquiry, and 300 DNA profiles.
Aryaan, this case, we've covered it before on our audio-only podcast.
Check out Spotify, Apple Podcasts if you want to hear us on audio only.
Yep, and I have to say this is absolutely one of my most favorite cases that you have ever covered. It's so incredibly intriguing. The imagery in this case is so terrifying and so sad. I really feel for the family members in this case. But it's been a long time since we have covered it. So there's a lot of detail that I don't fully remember, and I really want you to get into those today.
Let's do it. For this case, we head to the southern hemisphere, to a country that absurdly enough calls itself a continent, good old Australia. At the easternmost end of this landmass is the well-known city of Brisbane, the capital of Queensland. For all my fellow cricket fans and true patriots, it's the city that's home to the Australian cricket team's erstwhile fortress, the Gabba Cricket Ground, where the Indian team beat them. Just a 20-minute car ride northwards from the Gabba Cricket Ground is the northern suburb of Bridgman Downs. It's slightly on the outskirts of this very happening city, but nevertheless, Bridgman Downs is a posh neighborhood. In this neighborhood stands a 2-story mansion, beige bricks and a red roof decorated exterior. The address is 20 Grass Tree Close, Bridgman Downs, Queensland, Australia. It's a big house made for a big family, the Singh family. Vijay Singh, his wife Shirley Singh, and their 4 kids live there. 24-year-old Nilma, 18-year-old Kunal, and their youngest daughter, 12-year-old Siddhi. The 4th sibling, 26-year-old Sonia Pathak, was married and lived with her husband but often visited the 20 Grass Tree Close house because she lived in the same neighborhood. The family was of Indo-Fijian descent. Indo-Fijian, you ask, what the hell is that? Well, Fiji is a small island nation in Oceania off the coast of Australia. Up until the 1980s, more than 50% of this island's population was of Indian descent, predominantly, you guessed it, Bhojpuri. So, what are my Bhojpuri brethren doing on a small island on the furthest fringes of Southeast Asia? Well, once upon a time, our colonizers, the British, took a few of them from parts of Awadh, Uttar Pradesh, Calcutta, and some other southern provinces to Fiji to help them out with work. Except the help was indentured labor, and the work was slaving away on sugar and tea plantations. On 14th May 1879, the first shipload of 498 Indians set sail from Calcutta, and in the 37 years to come, over 61,000 Indians were shipped off to Fiji. Indentured labourers worked in appalling conditions for a 5-year mandatory period, after which they could return home. In 1916, this practice was finally ended, and Indians could finally visit the island nation as free agents. The community flourished, pre-existing indentured labour was freed, and thus the Indo-Fijian community sprang to life. As of 2007, 37.6% of Fiji is composed of Indo-Fijians, equating to roughly 313,000 people. Of this tightly knit 313,000, 6 moved from Fiji to Australia in 1993. Vijay Singh operated an automobile export business and relocated his family to the gargantuan island adjacent to their home island in the hope of an even better life. Not that they were poor to begin with, but the thirst of wealth and success drives even the best of us. In May 2002, the family moved to Bridgman Downs from Stafford. A year went by. Business was good, the kids were great, and consequently, life was pretty good. Or at least it appeared so. Almost a year after they moved into their new abode, on April 20th, 2003, Easter weekend was around the corner. Easter is a Christian holiday and celebrated across Australia and is usually a long weekend. The two-story mansion was quieter than usual this day. Both Vijay and Shirley were not home. In fact, they were not even in the same country. Part and parcel of Vijay's import-export business was business meetings abroad, especially in his home country of Fiji. A few days ago, husband and wife had left for one such routine trip, leaving the kids alone under the supervision of their eldest daughter, Sonia. But while the younger siblings visited Sonia's home for breakfast, all three, Nilma, Kunal and Siddhi, spent the nights alone at their 20 Grass Tree Close house. April 20th was a Sunday, Easter Day. The Singhs were Hindus and didn't necessarily partake in Easter as such, even though they celebrated the festivities with their friends. Kunal was due to go to a party that evening. You see, he was a popular high school student adored by his friends, but he politely declined the invite. His eldest sister, Nilma, who was in charge when Sonia wasn't around, wanted a quiet night to herself. Upon her request, Kunal heeded and told his friends he would be staying in. Siddhi, the youngest sister of 12 years, meanwhile, was getting on Nilma's nerves. The day before, Nilma was on an international call with her mother Shirley, complaining how Siddhi wanted to sleep on her bed because she was scared. Nilma liked her private space and felt like Siddhi was encroaching. The solution was that Siddhi gets to sleep in the master bedroom while the lights remain turned on. Win-win for everyone. As for Nilma herself, that Easter night, she was chatting with her friends via MSN Messenger and printing prayers. These Hindu prayers she was printing was for her dear friend and lover, Singh-Sica, lovingly known as Max. You see, Max was suffering from a brain tumor and said that he had just a few more weeks to live. Nilma was very close to Max, and the news of his 4th stage brain tumor came as a shock to her. She used to print Hindu healing prayers for him just like she was doing that night. She used to give him these blessings, hoping divine intervention could cure him. Little did she know that soon she was to be on the receiving end of thousands of such prayers pouring in for her. While this was happening in Australia, meanwhile, several hundred miles away, Vijay Singh in his hotel room was awoken by a nightmare. He dreamt of a lady, draped in black with a dark aura looming over her. A nightmare that perhaps presaged something more literal. The weekend turned to the weekday, and Easter was soon over. As Monday dawned, the Singh manor was eerily quiet. Nothing about it looked disorderly from the outside. Like I said, the exterior stands upright and resolute despite the contents of its walls. Max texted Nilma. No response. Sonia texted her siblings. No response. Kunal's girlfriend Katrina Leigh McElroy texted him and called him incessantly, but yet again, no response. The house was engulfed in radio silence, like an unmanned spacecraft adrift in space. Monday, April 21st went by without any communication. As the 22nd of April approached, the Singh siblings were still unreachable. Nilma had an interview scheduled at 10 a.m. at the flight center. She was an aspiring air hostess, and this interview was pivotal in securing a job. The flight center tried ringing her, but her phone pinged as switched off. Nilma never showed up for that interview. Max grew more and more worried, so he decided to take the matter in his own hands and take his kids to go watch a movie with the Singh siblings and consequently check in on them.
Okay, so Max has kids of his own.
Yeah.
Kind of like small detail you threw in there randomly.
Because it didn't appear with the relationship he shared with Nilma that he would have kids. But yeah, he does have kids.
And now I don't know how progressive the Singh family is, but I don't think it would go super well for a family's young daughter to be dating a man who already has kids of his own.
That's why they were never fully aware of that relationship, and it caused a lot of turbulence, which we'll get to. You see, at that time, in 2003, Max was 31 years old. That is a 7-year gap between him and Nilma, who is 24. Not only was he 31, he had 2 kids from his previous marriage. And again, this is not something Max had ever hidden from Nilma or her family. His ex-wife and children were common knowledge. But that is not to say that age gap is non-negligible. They headed out for the movie, but when they pulled up to 20 Grass Tree Close around afternoon, a quiet, unperturbed house awaited them. Max, his 11-year-old son Daniel, and his niece knocked on the front door. There was no response. They then knocked on the back door. Again, no response. Max sensed something was awry. This wasn't a simple, "I'm busy, leave me alone." It felt like something sinister was at bay. What it was, he didn't know. But he just felt like something was off. He handed his keys and 3 of his 4 phones to his son and told the kids to rush back to the car while keeping one phone on his person. He sensed danger and didn't want the youngsters to be in harm's way. He proceeded to force entry through the back door. He was gone for a while, approximately half an hour, when he returned with their dog Bujo, a Jack Terrier whom both him and Nilma had raised together. Bujo was glued to Max, who instead was sobbing, tears flowing unhinged. Max came out, dialed the emergency number 000, and his call turned that house into a crime scene for the days to come. 20 grass trees soon turned into the longest ever crime scene in Queensland history, spanning 30 days, followed by the biggest ever investigation by the very same department, spanning 5.5 years. But before we dive into what happened in the confines of that house, let's meet the family that lived there. Who were the Singhs really? Were they a happy family, sturdy like the mansion they lived in? And who was Max? How did he meet Nilma? Where there is a crime not too far away is a broken household, a fraught childhood, and a troubled kid. To find out this family's dark secrets, we turn the clock all the way back to 1993 when the Singhs emigrated to Australia. In 1993, the family of 6 moved to Stafford, a suburb of Brisbane. Vijay ran the auto import business while Shirley was a massage therapist. Vijay had a mustache and something tells me that he was a good-looking bloke back in his youthful years. But now, after 4 kids, a beer belly adorned his abdomen. In Stafford, they moved on Trouts Road and found a budding friendship in their new neighbours, the Sicas. The Sicas hailed from Naples, in Italy. Carlo and Singh-Sica had 3 kids, Claudio, their eldest son, Roseanne, their daughter, and Massimo, their youngest son. Now, Max's family runs a typical Italian business, an Italian restaurant, more specifically, a pizzeria. You see, pizza originated in Naples, and since the Sicas hail from there, they brought with them their culinary secrets. But in contrast to the Sicas' culinary secrets, the Singhs had secrets of their own. Suffice to say, Vijay and Shirley weren't your typical Desi couple. Far from it, really. While the timeline is unclear, Vijay and Shirley frequented swinger clubs and swinger groups. Essentially, that means switching partners to have sex with another couple. The swinging took place over the years, and the Singhs admittedly had slept with several men and women in this process. But that wasn't it. On at least 2 occasions, Vijay and Shirley had also invited sex workers to their own Stafford residence. And if all that wasn't enough for Vijay, back in Fiji, the import-export businessman had other dealings unrelated to his business. Around 6 to 7 mistresses. And if that's not enough intercourse for you, and I strongly believe that it is, Vijay also had intercourse with his nephew's wife. And not just that, but he filmed it. Don't judge a book by its cover, don't judge a home by its walls, and definitely don't judge a marriage by the smiles.
Okay, Aryaan, obviously when you started saying that the couple would engage in swinging, obviously I'm nobody to judge. It's a consenting couple. They're 2 adults. They can do what they please in their marriage as long as they're honest with each other. Then it became, they're bringing prostitutes home, which is kind of iffy. They're bringing like people that have sex with home, which is where their kids also live.
Yeah.
That's kind of shaky ground.
Yeah.
Now we've gone to your nephew's sister, wife who... Even worse, your nephew's wife. There is no family loyalty going on here. Just kind of latching on to anyone you can try and have sex with. And then there's the prostitutes back in Fiji. It's a lot.
It's a lot of...
It's a little excessive.
It's a lot of beeping also in this episode.
Absolutely.
So all the beeps are, you guessed which word. But these were but a few of the dark secrets saddled in the Singh household. Promiscuity wasn't even the worst of them. But these proclivities, if I may say so, caused an issue. A severe issue in January 1997 when Nilma was just 16 years old. She had fallen in love with a boy, Amit Lala. This was young love, first love, the kind where you talk on the phone endlessly all night long. It was an innocent love. But that innocence was soon to be defiled when in October of 1997, Vijay found out that his daughter was talking to a boy. Nilma hopelessly tried to hide it, but once Vijay's suspicions were confirmed, he picked up a cue stick lying nearby, the long wooden stick used to play billiards or 8-ball pool, and whacked his 16-year-old daughter. Not once, not twice, but endlessly beat her up. Nilma was bruised and battered, unable to walk, let alone attend school for the next 3 days. The police were called and Vijay was apprehended. We make fun of white kids being able to call the cops on their parents and how they are so coddled and weak, but honestly, the other extreme of Desi households where corporal punishments in the form of beatings is equally unhealthy, if not more.
Aryaan, unhealthy is obviously a huge aspect of it, but then there's the piece of what an absolute hypocrite of a man he is. I mean, sure, she may be talking to a boy, but most likely so are you, and you're doing it in an extramarital affair outside of your marriage.
For one episode, this case has a lot of intercourse and hypocrisy simultaneously.
That's crazy.
Vijay posted a $1,000 fine and a 3-year good behavior bond was signed. Now, a good behavior bond is a non-custodial sentence contingent on the offender's good behavior. Despite all of this, it's not the violence that pisses me off. I understand its widespread prevalence in Desi households, and to an extent, I'm impervious to it. What pisses me off, like Aishwarya said, is the hypocrisy. You live such a liberal and promiscuous lifestyle riddled with sex and debauchery, and your 16-year-old daughter cannot talk to a guy, let alone she's beaten up for it. Not my words actually, that's how the court classified the beating, as assault. While you're cheating on your wife, inviting sex workers and swinging with other couples. But whatever said and done, this did not hinder Amit Lala and Nilma's love. What did hinder it was another guy, another love, and the roller coaster nature of teenage love. At the age of 18 in August of 1999, Nilma moved to Fiji to work in the hospitality industry. She became a receptionist at the Raffles Trade Winds Hotel in the city of Suva. There she met a man named Jasveer Singh, nicknamed Viru, and fell for him. But unlike her dad, she realized the importance of loyalty, and despite her heart's desires, chose not to act upon them because she was still dating Amit. Her stint in Fiji lasted only 4 months, and she decided to come back to Brisbane in December of that year. Her feelings for Amit were waning, and her ambitions for her career were growing. Still, focused on hospitality, she wanted to join Emirates Airline as an air hostess. As cheeky as it may seem, she was well suited for that role, young, stylish, and pretty. Nilma had everything it took to be a hostess for one of the world's leading airlines. So in the first month of the new decade, January 2000, she broke up with Amit on the grounds that she didn't want to be tied down. The breakup must have been hard, but it was mutual and amicable. But it would still take a while before she could realize her dream fully. For now, back in Brisbane, Nilma became a guest service agent at the Pacific International Apartments. But let's step back for a second and analyze the Singh family unit as a whole. After moving to Australia in 1993, their relationship with their neighbours blossomed. The Sicas and the Singhs got along very well. This was in stark contrast to the Singhs' personal relationship, which was tumultuous, albeit spicy. The year was 2001 and Shirley had recently started a massage and beauty business. Often she worked from home, and often her technical aptitude, having belonged to the boomer generation, forced her to seek outside help. But she didn't have to go looking too far. Her neighbour's youngest son, 31-year-old Massimo Max-Sica, was a computer whiz kid. While facing one of her IT ordeals in May of 2001, Shirley sought Max's help. In what can only be described as cringy Bollywood plot, when a nerdy computer guy came to help the technically challenged auntie, he fell for her daughter. This was the first time Nilma was meeting Max, and as if instantaneously, Amit Lala and Viru were figments of the past. Max and Nilma were love at first sight. But if Amit, someone Nilma's age and from the same community, was not good enough, how could a 31-year-old Neapolitan with an ex-wife and 2 children qualify in Vijay's books? This had to be kept a secret. Secrets ran galore in the Singh household, the lies surmounting into an inescapable web, slowly but steadily engulfing them all. Now, Max frequented the household, finding one or the other excuse to help Shirley out. In a couple of months, the attraction grew into a fiery affair. In September of 2001, they began dating, and in Max's family home in Burby Island, 2 hours away from Brisbane, they consummated their relationship. They were mad for each other. The honeymoon phase just didn't seem to end. They couldn't get enough of each other. But just as this passion was growing, Nilma's ambitions were about to be realized. In February of 2002, she was accepted to begin flight attendant training for none other than Emirates, which meant she'd have to pack her bags and move all the way to Dubai, putting a pause, if not a full stop, on the couple's physical proximity. But many long-distance relationships find themselves spoiled by insecurity and desperation. Max got desperate, and it didn't help when Vijay found out that Nilma was talking to a boy, much like she was in 1997. This time, however, I don't entirely blame Vijay for his annoyance because how he found out was a little ridiculous. Back in 2002, when WhatsApp and FaceTime did not exist, the young couple talked via international phone calls. Towards the end of March, when Vijay was scheduled to pay for the family mobile bill, there was a spurious $1,000 surcharge.
Oh my god.
When he dug into it, Aishwarya, it was from calls by Nilma in Dubai to Max in Australia. Their relationship was uncovered at a hefty cost. Quite literally. Max feared he'd lose Nilma. So in what came as a shocker to Nilma and Nilma's family, the 31-year-old neighbor asked Vijay for his daughter's hand in marriage. You can only imagine what he said. He didn't use his hands, but he didn't hold back his tongue. Quote, "No, you 31-year-old white guy, you can't marry my daughter. You already have 2 children and an ex-wife." This argument escalated, threats of violence were made, and according to Vijay, quote, "Sika said he would take my daughter no matter what happens. And that made me really upset and we started arguing. And I did threaten him. I said I will smash your face with a brick. And he also threatened me that I don't know his capabilities and he will bring me down." End quote. The neighborly ties were now embittered. The threat of violence loomed over the Singhs and the Sicas. But that didn't stop Romeo and Juliet. They continued their long-distance romance, but both were unable to live without each other. They needed physical contact. They pined for each other. Max told Nilma that he'd risk it all and move to Dubai if he had to. He also promised her that he would help her find a hostess job in Australia at Qantas, one of Australia's leading airlines, using his connections. And Nilma wanted to come back badly for him. At the same time, tensions between the Singhs and Sicas was worsening. The ever-present danger of physical escalation prompted the Singhs to up and move. And that's how, in May of 2002, they moved to 20 Grass Tree Close in a separate suburb of Brisbane, away from the Sicas. Nilma missed Max, and so in what one may only call a naive, impulsive decision, without informing her parents, Nilma dropped out of flight attendant training and moved back to Australia. But not where you think she did. She moved in with Max in his vacation spot on Burby Island. Those were a steamy 6 months that followed. But too much steam blew the lid off, and young love is young love after all. Max's promises to secure a job at Qantas had been a sham. He had merely said whatever he had to get his lover back. And they both slowly began to see each other's flaws on prolonged exposure to one another. By the end of June of that year, the two had had enough of each other. Max made an anonymous call to the Singhs and informed them of their daughter's whereabouts. Not soon after, Nilma was back to her new place, 20 Grass Tree Close. When Nilma was back, it wasn't her father that assaulted her, but her mother, who was intolerant of her daughter's deceptive decisions. Her disapproval was understandable, but the violence that ensued wasn't. But here's the caveat I offer to all of you. The violence wasn't bereft of context. The Singh family wasn't faring particularly well, even though their business was booming. Vijay's mistresses were coming to light. Not one, but a handful. And Shirley just couldn't take it. The marriage was on the cusp of deterioration, and Shirley had briefly sought solace in smoking and alcohol, though these habits were temporary. Even though Nilma was back, Max and her were in the off and on stage, where they talked, had but weren't necessarily dating. Things took a weird turn in October of that year when Shirley flew to Fiji to confront one of Vijay's mistresses. And in wanting to do so, she took her 23-year-old daughter along. Juvenile to say the least to put your child in such a situation, but nonetheless, Nilma was fuming at her father. In an email addressed to Max, she wrote that she suspected her father of, quote, cheating with 6 or 7 women, end quote. She also asked Max to have her father, quote, beaten and bruised. The obvious implication there was that she wanted Max to beat her father up, and shortly thereafter, this request was ordained by her lover. The Singh family was in absolute turmoil. For starters, random threatening calls were made to the household. On one occasion, a Fijian man can be heard threatening Vijay, quote, "You are f***ing with my family and I'm going to f*** with your family," end quote. While the identity is unknown, most suspect it's the husband of one of the mistresses. Around that time, their youngest daughter, Siddhi, confided in her school counselor that Vijay was assaulting her again. These claims, mind you, were never substantiated. The youngest kid of the family had to go through all of this. And I should add that the rumor mill wasn't just churning. It was in full sway once these allegations of assault surfaced. Email forwards were making the rounds in the Indo-Fijian community. Back in 2002, a Yahoo forwarded email was the equivalent of a WhatsApp forwarded text message you get from your family group. That was the metric of virality. And emails from a certain Raj at hotmail.com containing lecherous allegations against Vijay for molesting his kids and cheating on his wife were making the rounds. Now, I personally find the email very fascinating. Raj at hotmail.com. If you're a guy named Raj, that is a pretty cool email to have. It was finally in November of 2002 that the brewing tensions culminated into a violent altercation. You remember that request from Nilma that her father is bruised and beaten for his mistresses that she sent to Max? Well, in some way or shape or form, those wishes came true. Vijay and Shirley got into another one of their heated arguments. But this time, Max showed up to their house, possibly on Nilma's insistence. He was there to confront Vijay about the molestation charges. But in his ardent desire to prove his love and machismo, his actions tarnished his relationship with Vijay and the family forever. Once the shouting match between Vijay and his wife Shirley began, he went back into his study and locked himself there. But soon, he heard a key inserted into the lock and the knob turned. Max stormed into the study, strangling Vijay as he lifted him by the neck. He threatened to kill him. Quote, "I know what you did to your daughter. I know what you did to us. I can cave your head in right now and get away with it. Capiche?" End quote. The police were called and the brawling duo was separated. Max was now a persona non grata in the Singh household, not welcomed even by his beloved Nilma. And on her latest trip to Fiji, Nilma had recommenced her affair with Viru, the same guy she met while she was at her hotel as a receptionist. This time, it wasn't limited to words and emotions. It seemed like Nilma and Max were moving on. They still talked, although lesser. Nilma grew fonder of Viru as they spent more time together, while it seemed like Max was starting new relationships of his own. But in March of 2003, out of nowhere, Max shared with Nilma his tumor prognosis. Final stage, brain cancer. She still loved him, or at the very least deeply cared for him. That's why she was printing out Hindu prayers for him to heal. But Easter 2003 changed everything. We are now back to 22nd April 2003 when Max walked into the Singh residence. He met their dog who leapt up onto him but could see distinct trails of blood leading to the bathroom. The bathroom itself was empty, but the bathtub was covered with sheets. Under the sheets were bodies. 3 dead bodies. The lifeless corpses of Nilma, Kunal and Siddhi. 3 harmless souls were snatched away. No clear motive is apparent. Was it revenge on Vijay for cheating with other women? Or was it Vijay himself? His track record of abuse was well documented and rumoured for sure. Once the police arrived on scene, it didn't take long before their eyes shifted on an altogether new suspect. Singh-Sica. Max. In what was to be Queensland's largest ever investigation, details about Max's history emerged that threw the country into a wild goose chase. Could Max really have done this? Remember when I said where there is a crime, not too far away is a broken household, a fraught childhood, and a troubled kid? Always. Nilma wasn't the only one from a troubled household. See you in the next episode of Desi Crime, where we cover part 2 of this story.
If you like what we do here at Desi Studios and absolutely love what we're wearing today, this is merch you can go buy all for yourself.
You can buy this Desi Crime merch in our YouTube store on the link down below at Karak Merch. Keep the engines at Desi Studios rolling so we can pay our videographer right behind the camera to make these amazing episodes just for you.